Wrestling with spam calls, phishing emails, or annoying scam texts? It's happening because your private information is being sold across the web. PCmatic Delist offers a free exposure scan showing which data brokers and people search sites are selling your data. Then, with a basic upgrade, PCmatic Delist completes the opt-out process to get your private information delisted. Stop the annoyance and safeguard your private information now. Visit www.pcmatic.com today.
Hello and welcome to Oh Behave. I am your host, Brian Middleton, and today we have Todd Ward as our guest. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure. Todd, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I got my PhD in 2013 from University of Nevada, Reno. Had an interesting journey in behavior analysis. I originally got into it at Stephen F. Austin State University, or SFA, in East Texas as an undergrad, and I took a behavior modification class. This was in the early 2000s, and I had the opportunity there to read a couple of Skinner books about behaviorism and Beyond Fame and Dignity, and we had to write weekly commentaries on each chapter of his books. And so his vision of how science of behavior can impact the whole entire world, that's what really grabbed me early on. And then ended up getting a master's in general experimental psychology, sort of with an emphasis in behavior analysis. Got into RFT at that time, did some research using relational frame theory to teach college students trigonometry in a more effective way using relational frame theory, relations between their graphical representations and the equations. That was published in JABA around 2006. And then I went to UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, and Ramona Homenfarb was my advisor, and she was an editor of Journal of Organizational Behavior Management. And so a lot of my time there was focused on OBM and behavioral systems analysis and just cultural issues. My dissertation related to adaptive teams and how do teams of people communicate and problem solve in a dynamic environment to meet goals and objectives. And part of that was informed by some research we were doing in Reno at the time, influenced by a grant that Ramona's lab had in conjunction with the Department of Computer Science. And it was a grant with the Department of the Navy. And so they were actually visiting, there was these training places that the Navy has, and one of them was in Rhode Island, and they would go there, and Ramona and some other grad students and some people from computer science, and they were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to train ship crews in the Navy in these room-sized simulators, and they were not giving any objective performance feedback. And so so part of that came from there, and another part of it came from some research we were doing in Reno at the time with acceptance and commitment therapy. And there was this other line of research we were doing where so instructional design was a big thing that we were doing at the time. And so we were designing these self-paced online ACT modules, and pertaining to college students or employees at businesses, and they just related to like values clarification and goal setting and different things depending on the situation. And so really my dissertation combined those two together, and we were looking at, how do teams of people communicate most effectively in a dynamic environment to solve problems together, and how can we add ACT and values clarification and perspective taking to that to enhance performance. So that's kind of my background. And then after I graduated, I became the faculty director of the behavior analysis online program at University of North Texas. So it's one of the first online BCBA certification programs. So I stayed there from 2013 to about 2015. And then I left and I went and did in-home autism for a while. And then during that time, that is also the period of time where I was really building up BSci 21, or Behavioral Science in the 21st Century, at bsci21.org. Because part of my background is actually in radio and television broadcasting. And I got my undergrad is in psychology and also broadcasting. And so I actually interned at a radio station. Actually, when 9/11 happened, I was broadcasting 9/11 on the radio when it was actually happening. And so BSci 21, I'm sure several of your listeners are familiar with that. So that was kind of a coming together of both psychology and my broadcasting background. And we did a lot of things. We wrote 700 or some odd articles, me and some other writers, and we sold a bunch of CE courses and did a bunch of other things. And now that's kind of on the back burner. And so anyway, these days I made a transition to the solar energy space, which for me, at this point, running my own business for 4 or 5 years and supporting myself and then directing that program at UNT, a lot of it was sales and prospecting and generating business. And given my background and social issues and OBM, I finally, and frankly, to be honest, I was really frustrated with clinical ABA world. The way a lot of the business practices there's a lot of business practices in that world that, frankly, I think are unethical. And there's a lot of OBM that is needed there. And so anyway, long story short, I decided to leave. And these days, once 2021 came around, I just realized, you know what? And people ask me even today, how did you become a solar energy consultant? And I'm like, well, it's really easy. I just got on Indeed.com and just browse the jobs that I dropped. I didn't browse jobs as a BCBA or anything like that. I just looked at the jobs that were there, and I knew my experience and what I like to do, my strengths. And I actually learned the hard way because I applied to a job before the one I have now, and I just submitted my curriculum vitae, which is 10 pages long and has a bunch of research and just all this stuff. And I got an interview, and I learned the hard way that was a huge distraction. And I just learned that no matter what I was going to say in that interview, they were distracted by the curriculum vitae and the PhD and the BCBA and all of that. So, and that kind of sucked, but it was a really good lesson. And so I trimmed it down, and so many people have come to me about, after the video I put out that went viral, about, how did you make this jump and everything? And just browse a job board with an open mind. And if you find something you like, make a 1-page resume. So for me, with my history and interests, I kept being drawn into the sales world. And I made a 1-page resume. I had my own business, my own LLC, BSci 21 LLC, for 4 or 5 years. Big piece of that is just drumming up business, cold contacting. And then when I directed the program at UNT, it was the same way, business to business, cold emailing and whatnot. And so that's how I framed my resume. And it was just 1 page. And then there was a small section at the bottom that talked about my education. And I didn't even mention the BCBA because people don't even know what that is. So,
yeah.
And that's where I am now. And I feel like, I don't know if your listeners know, but I made that a video several weeks ago, and I framed it as a message of hope, and I was just like, you know what, like if you are unsatisfied where you are as a BCBA, you should leave and just go do something else. You should value yourself enough. If you're not happy, like value yourself enough to go do something else, because of the original vision and what grabbed me about behavior analysis in the beginning, which was Skinner's books, Beyond Premeditating and about behaviorism in particular. And if you go back to Behavior of Organisms, he actually calls on all of us to, you know, as I said in that video, I'm a little scatterbrained right now, but as he said in that video, he was like, you know, he's not interested in rats and pigeons because he wants to be an expert in lever pressing or disc pecking, right? Those were convenient, and he's interested in the underlying behavioral processes, which are formless, right? And so, because those are behavior environment relations, and those don't take any form, really. And so, and then he called upon us in his book in the 30s, Behavior of Organism, to extrapolate at will to the world. And we have in autism, and autism is 100% a great thing in developmental disabilities, and is completely in line with his vision. However, as I said in my video, like, and that's like a lot of people talk to me, like a lot of people want to do other things.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean autism is bad or anything. There's some bad things happening in that industry with corporations and these investors trying to grow as quickly as possible and burning everyone out and all of that. But it's definitely in line, but there's so much more we can do as well. And that's not in any way to degrade autism or anything like that, because that's greatly needed. But there's a lot of people out there that want to do more. And so and that was really my vision with B-Side 21 as well. That was more writing articles and informational, but now I just want to get people out there. I'm kind of in the sales world now, so I want to come back to behavior analysis and ABAI and show people we have all this research, we want to package it into products and services, and it needs to be sold to the world. And that is not a bad word. We need to show people the value in what we have to offer, basically. And, you know, as we were talking earlier, what it comes down to is we need to be able to pay our mortgage and feed our kids by doing behavior analysis. And right now, realistically, one of the only ways to do that is autism and developmental disabilities, which is great, but a lot of people want to do more. And also the original vision was much broader than that.
Exactly.
Too. So,
well, and like, no, that was fantastic. I didn't feel a need to say anything other than nod my head. I'd like to say ABA is the form, but the function is live well. That's the function. We want people to live well. We want humans to live well. We want the world to work in a harmonious way. So whenever I come across somebody who focuses on sustainability or focuses on services that benefit us and get us to interact with our environment better, I am very quick to give credit where it's due, of saying, hey, you're a behavior analyst. Like, I said that actually to my chiropractor, because I went to talk with him, and he did these really amazing assessments. And I've received chiropractic services before, but he was top notch. Like, he was doing some fantastic assessments. He was taking data. He was trying to explain everything to me. And I'm like, please don't feel the need to explain. I'm just enjoying observing this. And then he's showing me through concrete data. And I looked at him and said, you know, you're a behavior analyst that focuses on the skeletal structure, right? And he kind of cocked his head at me as like, huh. It's like the science of behavior shouldn't be limited to a certain niche. It needs to be beyond that and into any place where it's applicable, which is any place where we're working with living organisms, and even going into non-living things like, well, depends on how you define artificial intelligence, but I hear that there are behavior analysts who are working in artificial intelligence now. Because maybe we have to redefine living.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's some people, Linda Hayes, who's one of my great one of the people I greatly idolize in behavior analysis, and I spent a lot of time with her in Reno, and she was working also with the computer science department in Reno on artificial intelligence and designing computer programs to encapsulate that in things. So, but speaking of data and everything you just said, like that's one of the appeals of where I am now, because in the solar energy space, at least the company I'm with called Power, we conduct a quantitative assessment, and I'm not trying to sell power or anything, but it's appealing. Like we conduct an assessment of not so much your behavior, but the products of behavior. So, the permanent products, and in this case, it is your power consumption. And there's really great data on your power consumption when we get your meter number in your power bill, and there's smart meters now. And so even if you haven't lived in your house for very long, we can get the power consumption of that house for however long the house has been there. And those are behavioral products. And then we do, with our engineering team, look at your roof and all of that and come up with very precise quantitative data on how much of your power can we offset, which is basically how much of these products of your behavior can we counteract so you can produce it yourself with the sun instead of paying someone else, your electric company, to do it in a way, not only pay them to do it, but pay them to do it in a way that pollutes the environment too. So,
yeah.
So it's kind of cool, like, so we're kind of dealing with products of behavior now rather than actual behavior, but it all relates, and it's very quantitative and data-based. So, and
that's the thing that we need to start doing more and more of. And even, what, I am in autism services and developmental disability services, and I love it. It's wonderful. But even though I'm in that place and in that position and don't feel the need to leave, I have felt the need to leave places where I didn't feel like it was ethical. So that attitude of, I don't owe anybody anything. I put forth what I'm putting forth, and I'm doing what I need to do. And if the values diverge from mine, or if it's not going in the direction that I need to go, then it's okay for me to leave. And so I think this attitude needs to be not just, and I'm not downplaying what you're saying, because we do need people outside of autism services and developmental disability. And we do need to expand beyond this, because honestly, we've got too many crises that are looming that we need to be out there helping and supporting and making a difference in the world. But if you're comfortable where you're at in the services you're delivering, but you're not comfortable with the organization you're with, leave.
Yeah.
Like, vote with your feet. If obviously try to influence from within, but there comes a certain point where if you're fighting a losing fight and the organizational behavior is such that you don't have the influence or power to be able to alter the environment, why stay?
And it's not only, and as I mentioned in that video, it's not only behavior analysis, it's a problem in human services. I'm very good friends with a physical therapist, for example, and and they use the same model of billing insurance, billable hours, and all of that. It's the same thing. I talk to her about it all the time. They're doing different things, but it's the same model. And even people like attorneys, you know, I wrote an article about this on B-Side 21. Attorneys bill time, and there's a lot of research out there. Just that model, I'm not necessarily saying it's bad, but there are contingencies built into that model that tend toward burnout and staff turnover. And so as an OBMer, that's how I look at it, as burnout and turnover and things like that. And those are, for a business, those are some of the most costly things. And I have experienced, and other people have too, and I'm not afraid to just come out and say it. Like, there's a trend where these big corporations are just trying to grow super fast and just chasing billable hours. And a lot of people find themselves between a rock and a hard place, where it's like you're being pressured to bill all these hours, but also you have the ethics code. And it's an awkward situation, quite frankly. Like,
Yeah.
Some people don't need 40 hours a week, you know, like, and I feel like I'm saying something that's taboo or whatever, but a lot of people think it. So it's, so now that I've kind of valued, I've come to realize, like, you know what, like, for me as a person who originally got into behavioral science to affect, you know, Skinner talked about education and nuclear war and just like a whole bunch of stuff. And like, that's what really grabbed me. And autism is, and developmental disabilities. I've worked in home, I've worked in clinics, I've worked in schools, I've worked with kids and adults. Like, I've done it all. It's been very rewarding and everything. And we need more people doing that. But there's also problems there.
Mm-hmm.
And the problems are mainly in the corporate and the OBM side. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of OBM that's needed there. And I mean, I feel like I'm being edgy or controversial or whatever, but a lot of people think this, and it needs to be said, I think.
Yeah.
So and there's also a greater vision out there, and we need lots of people. There's a huge demand for autism and DD, and we need more people there. There's also a huge demand from our own field. I can't tell you how many times people ask me, and on Facebook groups you're probably following too, like, there's always people asking, like, I'm interested in OBM, how do I do it? And people just don't know how. And like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a demand from within our own field to do more, because that's where our field started. And like, so I feel like we're missing out just globally on some things we could be doing. But that's not in any way to put down. We also need to be doing more for autism and DD. There's a huge demand there. And that's completely in line with our science. So
yeah, and I'm definitely in the forefront on well, not in the forefront. I'm loud on the topic of how we can improve ABA for autism services and developmental disabilities. Anybody who's followed my work knows that. I'm not afraid to be controversial there, but the flip side to that is that, well, a big part of how to affect change is to realize that sometimes the best way to affect change is to vote with your feet.
Yeah.
To say, I'm done with this. I'm not going to play this game. I'm going to go do this here. The science itself is valid. And one of the biggest criticisms that autism services has from ABA critics is, well, related to how obsessive we are about being stuck within a little niche.
Yeah.
That's the subtext of it. There's more to it than that, but I'm reading between the lines there. And to be fair, they're right. And one of the biggest criticisms is also, again, going to the heart or the meat of the matter, how we can be very inhuman and detached from the people that we work with. And I think a big part of that is because of that burnout, because of that feeling. Because you know what, I've met nurses who've had that detachment. I've met speech therapists who've had that detachment. I think it has a lot to do with that burnout, and a big part of it is teaching and reminding and telling people to go back to their values. And if your values are not there, then what are you doing there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, as I mentioned before, I have a large background in ACT. I mean, I came from Reno. It's impossible to escape ACT from there. Sorry,
You okay?
And but then I just realized, like, getting too many thoughts in my head, but I feel like, this is not to point any fingers at anybody, but I feel like because of such demand for autism and DD, and I think we have at least 300 online or in-person BCBA programs at this point, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way the contingencies have gone, I just think, actually, I've given keynote addresses at conferences, one in Canada in particular, and like I actually never thought I would see the day, but a lot of people aren't even contacting Skinner anymore, and I feel like what we're ending up with, just due to the contingencies of supply and demand, I think they're just economic contingencies where the jobs are, and that shapes the training programs. Like, people are ending up with a view of ABA that is very procedural based.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I have these set of tools in my toolbox. I have my preference assessment, I have my NCR, I have my differential reinforcement, I have my, extinction procedure or whatever. And, but you got to look at what's underneath all of that. Like, again, go back to Skinner, and I know there's people that don't contact him these days, and I know I seem old and stuffy or whatever, but like,
in my program,
it's not about the lever press, and it's not about the key pack. It's about what's underneath all of that.
In my program that I did, which was a postmaster certificate, to be fair, because my master's is in education and administration. But in my program, we were assigned 4 chapters from about behaviorism. Mm-hmm. And I was a little frustrated because, like, okay, Cooper is a decent book.
Yeah.
But
it's very thorough. Yeah.
It's very thorough, but like, where's the narrative? Where's the story? Where's the heart of it? I wanted to know more about Skinner. And so I have not read enough of Skinner. But I've read a few of his books so far, and I absolutely adored Walden 2. I thought it was thought it was an amazing book, especially considering that, like, a lot of the I've had a lot of grounding in reading of air quotes here classics. I went to a truly traditional liberal arts college for a while before getting into education, and you can't say that you've read something until you've powered through War and Peace in 72 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that was a lot of fun. But like, Walden 2 very quickly went up to the top of the charts for me when considering classics, big air quotes there. Because he was considering some really good questions, and some of the answers he offered weren't the best answers, but that's not what makes a classic. What makes a classic is asking good questions and diving into and trying to consider things. And so, like, yes, we need more exposure to what Skinner himself said. But here's another thing I want to bring up about Skinner. So I've read
Yeah.
quite a few of his things. And every single time that he has brought up Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, or any of the
Well,
other,
he's not without fault, so yeah.
yeah, every time he's brought up any of those psychologists and other branches of psychology, he has spoken about them with nothing but respect. And yet in our field, there is this, and I caught the bug for a little bit, and then I had to catch myself when I read what Skinner said. But there's this disdain, this talking down to and about Freud and Jung and those other folks.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're from. That's not where we came from. B.F. Skinner said nothing but wonderful things about him. Like, he was critical. He would say, like, okay, these are some flaws, but
Yeah.
like his the respect that I feel and felt through what I read, and I even listened to one of his recorded speeches.
Yeah.
Like, we need to address a lot of drift in our science, and a part of that is by going back to that source and realizing that the source of our science isn't dogmatic, it's a science. That's one of the things I loved about Skinner. And when I see people dogmatizing and turning it almost into a religion,
Yeah.
and missing the point, like,
Yeah.
Skinner has been wrong and has been disproven with some of his theories. And guess what? If he was alive today, he'd probably say something along the lines of, "Good, this is good science."
That's actually really interesting, because I feel like, based on my experience, Skinner has tended to be rather, I feel like he did a lot of good things, but I
Mhm.
also feel like he did a lot of bad things for us. So he has an article called "Why I'm Not a Why I'm Not a Cognitive Psychologist," and in a lot of his writings, he just kind of rails against mentalism and things like that, which
Mhm.
I understand where he's coming from and everything, but um, I do think that, as great as he was, it's really interesting to hear your perspective, though, because I
Well,
kind of
I
have.
haven't read as much as you, so I'm glad to hear about this. This is exciting for me. I'm
Well,
glad to be proven wrong.
well, I'm not saying you're wrong or anything, but I'm saying, in my perspective, um, I feel like it was a bit dogmatic, and just because he had a lot to say about mentalism and all that, and I get what he's trying to say about that, but I feel like nowadays, with the evolution of functional contextualism,
Mm.
ACT and RFT, and some people don't know this, but so they have their own group, ACBS, Association for Contextual Behavioral
I'm a member.
Psychology, and Contextual Behavioral Science, and they're bigger than ABAI now. And um, I feel like functional contextualism is a next evolution of radical behaviorism, because, and I got really into Cantor and interbehaviorism while I was at Reno. I don't know how much we want to dive into that, but I feel like Skinner, he did say, our goal is prediction and control of behavior. And he said a few other things, but he didn't really get in a lot to the philosophy. And he got into a lot of the process, because he was an experimentalist by nature. But where we're at today, I think, with ACT and RFT and functional contextualism, they get a lot more into the bigger picture, like what you were kind of alluding to earlier. And like, our goals are prediction and influence of behavior, and we have a contextualist worldview. And Skinner also got at this, but I think the functional contextualists get at it more, and they're like, we can loosen up in our language a little bit, because after all, it's the function of our behavior, not so much the topography that matters. So, and that really comes into play, I think, which I feel Skinner missed the ball on this, though it is in line with his own thinking. But And when I was doing B-Side 21, it's like, our language has functions depending on who you're talking to. And this directly relates to dissemination. And now I'm in the sales world, and that's dissemination in a different way, in a more economic way. And the Action RFT folks are exploding. And I think it's because, but even for the BCBA, I've been in that world for a long time. When you're sitting down talking to a parent, because in the ABA world, part of those billable hours are parent training.
Mm-hmm.
You got to loosen up in your language
Mm-hmm.
to communicate with them. You got to loosen up the topography and focus on the function. And if the words you are saying are not functioning in the way you want to your audience, then you got to change up your words, right?
Yeah.
So, and to say it bluntly, like if we get too technical, if we're talking to a parent and we're talking about positive reinforcement and discrimination and all of this technical jargon, we may lose them. And so, and that happens sometimes in the clinical world. And so I just feel like today where we're at with the functional contextualism and all of that, there's just a greater Skinner promoted that, I think, but he also got caught up in his own technical language, I think. And so there's freedom in loosening up your language, focusing on the function of what you're saying to how your listener is responding to you, like how you're responding to me. You're my listener and I'm your listener, and being flexible in that, because we're looking at behavior, and we're working with functional relations, behavior and environment relations, and we're after predicting and influencing behavior. And so whatever does that is fair game,
Well, thank you for bringing that up, and I'm glad you did, because I've learned something. This is fantastic, and that's something that I suffer from foot in mouth disease. It's a common side effect of just being me, and I have done that, and I've had to eat crow, as the term would go, to realize that I got too stuck in the language.
And we all do it.
We all do it, but the big thing is being self-aware enough to be able to say that. And I'm glad you offered that perspective with Skinner, because like I don't have as much under my belt when it comes to reading. I will say that what I have read has been heartening, but you know what? That's the other side of it, is going, Skinner was a human. He made mistakes. He had his blind spots. We all have our blind spots. How can we focus on the function? Going back to what I said before, the form is ABA, the function is live well. Like contextual behaviorism, totally agree. I think that's the next evolution. But
you look at your treatment plan for any kid or adult with autism or any diagnosis, that treatment plan are outcomes. Those are functions.
Mm-hmm. And
how you get there should be flexible.
Yeah.
We're a functional science. So sometimes people get too caught up in the techniques and the procedures and things. So sometimes I just want to bring it back home, because I know your audience are BCBAs primarily.
Or learning to get into ABA. I have a lot of students who listen too.
Yeah. So when you're talking to a parent about their kid and their treatment plan and goals, sometimes it's okay to talk about their mind and
mm-hmm.
things like that, if you're able to communicate more effectively with the parent. It's okay. That technical language is for a certain audience, which is mainly ourselves, other BCBAs and researchers and things like that. But it's not made for the public. And that's one thing I tried to do with B-Side 21 for a long time, is because I wanted an outlet. I actually made that when I was working on my dissertation in Reno, and I just wanted an outlet to talk about. So
I'm sorry, for a second there we lost audio. Could you say that you said you wanted an outlet for what?
oh yeah, so I wanted an outlet. I started B-Side 21 because I wanted an outlet to talk about behavioral science in a more accessible way to the public. And you do not access the public by speaking in a super technical way. Your people, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're not going to listen to you.
Exactly.
So you got to keep your eye on the ball, right? As behavior analysts, as Skinner himself said, our ball is prediction and he said prediction and control of behavior. I like prediction and influence better because there's biological factors and all of that influence. We don't have a monopoly on behavior. There's other setting factors that are involved. So anyway, prediction and influence of behavior, that's what our eye is on. And so whatever gets us there should be some flexibility, and we should keep an eye on the function.
So I recently attended a CEU through the Do Better Collective, and it was Jamie Waldvogel. I probably butchered her last name. Sorry, Jamie, if I got it wrong. Where she was talking about this, where she was talking about why do we have to go into the 4 functions of behavior? It's the kid wants something or wants to get away from something. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who you're talking to, you know.
Well, usually when she's talking about children and doing interventions and early intervention with children, it's usually somebody wants something or wants to get away from something. So, yes, when they're receptive, then we can tell them about the 4 functions of behavior and go in more details and help them to see more. But to start with, okay, what's the person want, or what are they trying to get away from, right? So start simple, be receptive and focus on the person's context. And I think that's one of the things I love most about functional contextualism. One of the things I love about behavior analysis itself is that it's a science of description. So we're not trying to explain, we're trying to describe what we see. And then if we become functional contextualists, then we're describing, and then we start using the information from other sciences that interact with radical behaviorism. Then we can start figuring out explanations, but also we can be excited if our explanation is wrong. But because we're not stuck on this idea that we're right or we're wrong. I actually came up with a fun little ACT metaphor for this. Imagine your ideas as being apples in a barrel. And if you have a bad apple, a bad idea in your barrel, and you look at yourself as content, then you're going to defend that bad apple, even as it's rotting all the other apples as they're turning. Right. But if your self is context, then you're like, I am the barrel, the apples are in me. These are my ideas. So if I see an apple that's a rotten apple, I'm going to take it out and remove it. And I'm going to add good apples to the barrel. Right.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing as a scientist as well. And another thing that I think is important as scientists is seeing our peers for who they are. And I mean that literally. We have peers all around us. A parent is a scientist. They just don't know it yet. Or maybe they do. The
parents are pretty good observers of their kids' behavior.
They may not know everything when it comes to the foundational science of it, but they figure out a lot of stuff.
I mean, there's practical constraints. I found in doing autism and all that, parents don't have a lot of time. So It's hard for parents to actually take data in the moment when it's happening, you know?
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean you should totally discount descriptive anecdotal reports either. You got to be practical.
and along these lines, like I started bearded behaviorist as I was trained to become a BCBA, as I was working as a special ed teacher and RBT, and very quickly I got the joy of interacting with the elitist crowd who are like, who are you to talk to us? You're not a BCBA. And then even when I was a BCBA, when I've commented on some things that behavior analysis needs to improve when it comes to the way that we're treating autistic clients and the way we're approaching things, I've even had someone say, who are you to tell me how to like, you don't have authority over me. And my response was, well, our ethical code says that we need to call out unethical behaviors. So, wrong. Like,
Yeah.
we need to be true scientists, and a true scientist is willing to self-examine an idea that we have and to dive deeper into trying to figure out how we can do better as a scientist.
Yeah.
One of my favorite tales from science itself is Abraham Maslow. He had multiple Nobel Prizes in the area of physiology, and when he came across reflexive conditioning or Pavlovian conditioning, as it's now called, he was studying digestion. And was doing more research, and he dropped everything in the area of physiology to try to understand what he saw.
Yeah.
And that I find that highly impressive, because that's really difficult for me if I find something that to drop everything else and move into it. But at the same time, like, that's what a good scientist does, is willing to see, ooh, I might be doing something wrong, or ooh, this is something I could do to improve on.
Yeah.
And it all starts with that self-examination.
Yeah. And that's and you gave some good examples of that earlier, and that kind of relates to seeing the world through your language versus seeing your language as behavior. And that's really tough for a lot of people to wrap their heads around a lot. That's something called diffusion, or cognitive diffusion. And but our own thoughts about the world heavily influence everything. But if we can come to see, like, those, what you were saying earlier, there were some people who are reacting towards you, as the gatekeepers or whatever. And if we can, like, back up from that and come detach a little bit, diffuse a little bit from our own verbal behavior, and see the context that it's operating in, that can help a lot. But that's a harder thing to do in actuality.
It is.
That's where the whole mindfulness and diffusion and all of that stuff comes into play. And, if anyone's ever read Skinner's Verbal Behavior, he talked all about that. But the hard part of that is to, like, recognize that the things you're thinking, that's all verbal behavior, and those are acts and contexts, and to see that as such. And that's really hard to do.
That is hard to do. I'm glad you brought up some more of the act stuff, because this kind of leads to my next question. And by the way, if you're running low on time, let us know. That's okay. You don't feel like you're a captive here. But, like, how has ACT contributed to your worldview as a behavior analyst? And it sounds like you've already answered that a little bit, but as a person who is passionate about ACT and is learning to dive into relational frame theory, this is something that has helped me. But I'd like to know from your perspective.
Yeah. So ACT, to me, I think one of the core things about ACT is values. And Skinner talked a lot about values. Well, not really. He talked a little bit about values in one of his books, probably about behaviorism. And he basically equated values to reinforcers. So he talked about what we call good is what is reinforcing. I think that's about behaviorism. Don't quote me on that. And he definitely said that somewhere. Anyway, the ACT world views values, and there's some OBMers that do the same thing, that have said the same thing. But in the ACT world, values are behavior, right? So valuing is a behavior, right? So me saying, I am I've done a lot of research related to ACT, and typically we want people to articulate their values in words. One way to do it is words ending in ing, so you get an action word. So like parenting is a value, or learning is a value, or any action can be a value. So values from the ACT world are basically overarching life goals that can never be achieved, right? So you can never be the best parent ever. Parenting is an ongoing action. There's never a point that you get at where you're like, I'm the top parent of the world and there's nothing more I can do, things like that.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing thing, and it functions as a motivating operation, or in their language, a motivative augmental, perhaps. There's two different types of augmentals. They're basically motivating operations, but different processes. And so for me, and I've come to realize that actually a lot of people out there in the world and the rest of the world have actually already figured this out. They just don't call it that, and they just don't do research about it. So it's actually kind of a humbling thing. And in the sales world that I'm in now, or the business world, there's a really great guy that I follow. I actually have purchased some of his courses, and I watched a few every day. His name's Grant Cardone, and he has a really great online course sequence, not only for sales, but for life as well. What do you want out of your life? And it's a bunch of mindset types of things. And a lot of it can be translated as, what do you want out of life? What do you want your life direction to be? And we would talk about that as values and goal setting, right? So I value being a particular type of person, right? And to fulfill those values, I'm going to set these goals along the way to fulfill that. And we've done research with college students back in Reno, putting them through values and goal setting trainings online. And we'd basically be like, why are you in college? What's important to you about being in college? Because some people just go to college because their parents told them to, and we found when we get people to articulate why they're going to college and then set goals aligned with that. And this is published in the Journal of Contextual Behavioral Science. We prevented people from dropping out of college, and we boosted cumulative GPAs from a 1 or 2 hour online ACT module, getting people to clarify their values and set some goals around college education. And so for me, in that viral video I made that I wasn't expecting to go viral, I was actually a little nervous making it. I was just like, you know what? Like, I know there is a fair amount of people at BCBAs out there that are unhappy in their work. And so if you could just value yourself enough and connect it to the original purpose of behavior analysis, what Skinner was saying way back in the 30s, the world is open to you. And I'm in the solar energy space now. It's not the topographical ABA world. but I view myself as creating new opportunities for behavior analysts. And I feel like people should be able to go into any area and wrap behavior analysis around it, because behavior is everywhere, right? In the sales world, which is basically just the generating business world, every business needs sales, and it doesn't have to be a bad word or anything like that. We're not twisting anyone's arm or anything, but it's kind of the world of motivating operations. So most of the people I talk to, I'm like, hey, it's kind of, as Grant Cardone says, the person who has these courses I'm watching every day, you need to generate massive actions. You need to talk to a lot of people, create volume. And the people who are really kind of interested in solar energy, they all kind of say, oh yeah, I've actually been thinking about that already. Yeah. And now that I'm talking to you about it, like, I would like to learn more about it. And so we're kind of operating in the motivating operation space in here, but there's a few really big names in this whole business space that are super successful and don't know anything about behavior analysis. But as a behavior analyst, you can translate everything they're saying into behavior analytic terms, and it's mainly the motivating operations world. And I want to go back to AVAI and give talks and workshops about, hey, like, there's this entire skill set out here that can be useful in fulfilling Skinner's original mission that he called upon us to do in the 1930s, which is extrapolate at will to the world around us. That's almost word for word from Behavior of Organisms. And to do that, we have to, it's not really doing more research. Like, research is useful and everything, but really it is reaching the rest of the world and contacting them and learning how to talk to them. I gave a keynote address at Western Michigan, a talk at Western Michigan University a few years ago. And I talked to a bunch of their grad students, and so many of them had these awesome ideas. Like, I would love to incorporate behavior analysis with this other thing, like whatever it is, like, that they happen to be into. And they were like, but they just didn't know how to do it. And there's so many other people out there that I've contacted through B-Side 21 and other places, behavior analysts that has all these awesome ideas that they want to do. They just don't know what to do about it. And the solution, I think, in my own experience, is to go and talk to people that are not behavior analysts. Like, when I was doing B-Side 21 and supporting myself full time from that, I would go to business networking events on a weekly basis. And to give you one example, there's this one that happens, I don't know what they're doing now post-COVID, but there's this one called 1 Million Cups. And it's in like 200 or 300 cities across the country every Wednesday. This is pre-COVID. But anyway, every Wednesday, there's a few locations here in Dallas we would go to, and like 2 startup companies would get on a stage with a microphone, and they would each have like 15 minutes to talk about their company and what they were looking to do. And then they would open up to Q&A. And so one day I grabbed the microphone. There was this company, there were a bunch of like tech people. They were trying to design an app or something that would listen to the cries of a baby and sort of somehow translate the cries into what they meant for parents. And so I grabbed the microphone and I was like, hey, I've been working with children for a while. And I think what you're talking about, what we would call is the functions of behavior, and have you ever worked with anyone in psychology or human services? And they're like, no, well, we're all computer people, and then I got a meeting with them afterwards, and like, it ended up not progressing. That's just how business goes and everything. But yeah, a little example, like, there's a whole world out there of people, and you never know who you're going to meet and how, behavior is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And it's formless. And sometimes people just got to break out of this. ABA is not your preference assessment.
Yep.
And it's not your FA. It's everywhere, and it's formless. So if one thing I could communicate in this podcast, it's that. And that's Skinner's original vision. And I think that's been lost a little bit. And people need to go read Skinner.
Agreed.
But it's also very liberating and freeing, and if you feel like you're not being fulfilled with the topographical ABA, like, think about, like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what do you want to do every day? What do you want to do? Do you want to help people? Like, I want to help people. If you're feeling very frustrated and unfulfilled with that in a certain realm, go do it in another realm. Like, I'm helping people now in the solar energy and renewable energy space. Like, that's another form of helping people, and it's data-based and quantitative and all that. So just gotta sort of break up your thinking a little bit.
And a big part of that is also making sure you're being exposed to other things too. Like, I'll tell you right now, like, I don't just read behavior analysis research. I go beyond that. Contextual behavioralism, ACBS, I like some of the stuff that they do, but I also regularly get on there and look for articles and look for research in other areas. One of my favorite thinkers outside of behavior analysis is Dr. Jonathan Haidt, who is the principal researcher behind moral foundations theory. And moral foundations theory has a lot of overlap with a relational frame theory, like a lot.
Can we pause it for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be right back.
And we're back. So yeah, relational frame theory and moral foundations theory, I see a lot of overlap between them. And that's something that I feel is really important, is that we're taking in stimuli outside of one specific area. Please do read up on behavior analysis and the research that's being done and those sorts of things. But, like, what better way to create an echo chamber than not to hear anything outside of where you specialize, right? We've talked about how algorithms and those sorts of things are creating echo chambers when it comes to social media, politics, science, and the impact on different things. Well, same thing applies. Like, we need to make sure we're branching out. A big part of I've been a part of the movement for BCBAs who listening to the autistic community, especially those who are anti-ABA, and trying to understand what's going on and what we need to do to change it. But, like, why would we limit ourselves? Why would we prevent the progression of a incredibly effective science from going in and affecting things like, well, animal science is already affected by us, but what about, sustainability? You're an area that you're working in. And it doesn't just have to be with sustainability of power, also can go into recycling. It can go into creating products that are more sustainable, creating contingencies where organizations will behave more sustainably. And a passion area for me is how we use plastics. Plastics are highly toxic to our environment. What can we do to change them? And one of the things that I'm fascinated by history. That was my first special interest. And hearing my dad talk about when he was a kid going to the grocery store with, I forget exactly how much money he was given. I think it was 50 cents. It might've been less than that. And being able to buy a moon pie and a bottle of Coke, drink it, then turn his bottle of Coke, used bottle in for the money back that comes from it. Because at the time, Coca-Cola would reimburse the distributors for collecting the bottles
Yeah.
so that they could wash them and reuse them. And then my dad being able to buy a comic book with the money he got back, and I think a piece of bubble gum or something. Like, what happened to that time? What happened to that? Like,
Yeah.
we're now at the point where we have 3D printers. We're at the point where we can do micro distribution. That's probably not what it's called, but like, little hubs where there's creation, and we don't have to do these massive factory things, and we can just be a whole lot more sustainable. We're to the point where people can generate their own power on their roofs,
Yeah.
like what you're doing with power. Like, why? What is it that we can do to try to alter the contingencies, alter the environment so that we can be more sustainable? Because we don't want to get to the point where there's a crisis before we start making change. What if we affected change now? What if the change that we affect could be as revolutionary as the telephone, as revolutionary as the automobile, as revolutionary as the internet?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, I'm completely on board with that. And I would say that I feel that I'm missing piece that I never got trained in getting my PhD in behavior analysis, like whether it's affecting policy at the policy level, governmental level, or if it's whatever it is, you have to interact with somebody
mhm.
to influence them in some way, right? And behavior analysts are not the best at interacting with other people. We're really good at interacting with ourselves.
Mhm.
I myself, I'm loving myself in here too. I've kind of thrown myself into the fire over the past few years, but we're really good at speaking our own language to ourselves. We're not as good. There's lots of exceptions, of course. We're not as good at speaking to everyone else. I think that's a gap in our repertoire. It's a social skills gap that behavior analysts have.
As an autistic adult who is very much aware of his own social skills gap, yes. Sometimes I'm wondering why other people are worse at social skills than me.
Yeah, as behavior analysts, we have a social skills deficit that we
Yeah.
need to be trained on. Even if it's at the policy level, talking with lawmakers, even if you're talking about, sustainable energy, like think that through for a second. If you're talking about sustainable energy, how is that going to affect someone? Are you going to affect it at the policy level? Okay, well, you need to create rapport or pairing, whatever, with lawmakers, or you need to do what I'm doing and figure out how to talk to homeowners or business owners and get them to like you. That's pairing, the pairing process, and show them data where it makes economic sense that they would actually want to buy solar energy, right?
Mhm.
So it gets down to like someone has to interact with someone at whatever you're talking about. Like someone has to interact with someone else, and that is we have a problem as behavior analysts doing that. And most BCBAs, again, I think would relate that as to the ability to talk to a parent, in a non-technical way. Like it comes back to that, I think. And so my take home message, I think, would be partly related to that. And just, don't forget that behavior is everywhere. That's how we started, the big vision. If you're not happy where you are, look on a job board, try to wrap behavioral science around it. Even like a bartender, there's behavioral science in that. You have to talk to people. Like there's anything is related to behavioral science. So I just feel like people are missing that today. And when people hear it, when I made that video, I've got so much feedback about it. Like it's really inspired a bunch of people. So that's my take home message. Like whatever you want to do, just do it. if you feel like the topographical ABA is leaving you unfulfilled, then do something else. And remember that no matter what you do, there's behavior involved.
Yep.
And so that's behavior analysis. And value yourself enough to do whatever you want to do that fulfills you and makes you happy in life. And break out of the topography, focus on the function instead. So,
well, Todd, if someone were to want to reach out to you and talk to you, or to find out more about what you're doing over at Power, which is spelled Powur, folks, just in case you wanted to know. If someone wanted to reach out to you, how could they get a hold of you?
Great question. So I'm on Facebook, Todd Ward. I also have a Facebook business page called Todd Ward Solar Consultant. I'm on LinkedIn, Todd Ward. You can also email me. I have a few different email addresses. My one for solar energy, I guess I'll just give that one for now. It's called TW Energy Consultants with an S at the end at gmail.com. So through one of those ways, you should be able to find me.
Fantastic. Well, Todd, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with us. And if you wanted to come on and talk about any of the task list items later, you're more than welcome to. Only if you want to. But
I've enjoyed it.
It was very enjoyable. Thank you. Folks, remember that the OBHEY podcast is a open source education material, which means you can use all or part of this podcast towards furthering education and behavior analysis. Please be sure to cite your sources. Thank you so much for joining us, and go behave.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.